Yo, what's going on everyone? Brian and Jim here with DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and today we are reviewing the last in the Shadowrun series, with Shadowrun Returns for the PC.
Released in 2013, this was released to Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and even to Android and iOS mobile systems. This was developed and published by Harebrained Schemes, and it was a crowd-funded project, getting over $1.8 million in funding on Kickstarter. This game it's almost a loving tribute to the entire Shadowrun universe and the games that came before it. Let's see if it lives up to the legacy. So, graphically, this actually looks really good. Truth be told, we're not the biggest PC nuts, so it's kind of tough to judge something like this against other games, especially something that was crowdfunded. So it isn't, a gigantic studio behind it, but fair is fair. We like the color schemes in the game. A lot of the set pieces look really varied and detailed, but to be fair, some of the set pieces kind of repeat themselves after a while. So we would have liked to see a little bit more variation. It's still good. The character designs are awesome, and probably more than any other Shadowrun game, you really see the differences in all the different races, or just the designs of all the recurring characters and Shadowrunners you can hire to join with you. It's really cool. The avatars are as well drawn as they've ever been, and yeah, we liked it. So, to sum it all up, Brian gave it an 8 and I gave it a 7. And as far as beer goes, I'll give 1 beer for the repeating environments. The sound. Once again, the sound's pretty good. It was actually worked on by the guys who worked on the Super NES and Genesis games, so that's a cool throwback. The sound's more reminiscent, I would probably say, of the Super NES, where the music's really more moody and maybe not as catchy or memorable, and there aren't that many music tracks, truth be told. They're good, but after a while you do kind of get sick of hearing the same ones over and over again. There's a decent amount of sound effects, though while all the guns sound different, all the melee attacks sound the same and all the magic attacks sound the same. So that's a little bit disappointing. But what you get is actually fine, it fits the game well. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but it stems to be on the side of above average. When it comes down to the scores, we both wound up giving it 6s. It's definitely on the, the plus side of average.
Jim!
Oh, Jesus God, what?
Why didn't you mention that there's a song that's a remake from the Super NES version?
Yes, while playing, we did notice that there was a song that was from the Super NES that sounded very familiar, and it's definitely a remix of the old game. Truth be told, I didn't play as much as Bri, so I can't tell if there's a Genesis remix, but it was definitely cool to hear this in there. And as far as beer goes, I'll add 2 beers. 1 happy beer for the Super NES remix, and 1 sad beer for the samey sound effects.
So this is a tactical, turn-based action RPG, and I gotta be honest, this is probably the most fitting control scheme for any of these Shadowrun games. When you have parties with you, it just makes sense to have to, control each person and do it in a turn-based manner versus the mess that was the Sega and the boringness that was the Super NES. And I'm not going to count the first-person shooter from 360. So, I actually really enjoyed it, but I gotta be honest, I play a lot of PC games, and the mouse and keyboard kind of combined, it still just takes a little getting used to, because really, it controls fine. You're not exactly trying to time things, you just click and they're pre-animated, actions. When you see our score, we both gave it a 9. I just didn't feel like it was perfect, but it was well above the other games in the series as far as control is concerned. And as far as beer, I'll add 2, 1 for me and 1 for Jim, just because we don't belong to the PC Master Race. So I wanted to keep the control short and talk a little bit more about the mechanics of the game and the gameplay. Like I mentioned, this was a perfect scenario for the Shadowrun universe, because my biggest complaints in the previous game was just how tedious it was to fight people or use menu systems. This game got it down packed. Once again, the plot of the game centers around a very kind of simplistic opening story. In this case, you're a nameless Shadowrunner that has to avenge his friend Sam's death. You go around investigating people, and just like all the other Shadowrun games, the plot thickens to crazy levels. but you still have to upgrade your character using the karma system. And it's much different. I'll just let you see this menu here. You have a shit ton of options that basically break down to a whole different types of way you can play the game. Way more than the other games. The level of character customization in this game is insane. Not to mention, you can pick from 6 different classes, and they all play very differently. But like I said, the combat, although I love the fact that it's turn-based, it really can take a long time, and it can really drag out some of the battles where you'll just be begging for them to be over. Not to mention, if you're halfway through a battle and you've already spent 20 minutes and then you die, it's gonna piss you off to no end. Now granted, you can go about fighting characters in a number of different ways. You can once again hack into the Matrix, and hey, I think this looks better than the Matrix in the other games as well. Or you can send a drone, or as always, you can summon things. My personal favorite was once again just shooting the shit out of people. The last thing I want to mention that Jim already touched on, this game did a great job of calling back to the old games, specifically bringing in characters like Jack Armitage and some of the storylines from the Sega game as well. We love that about it. So as you see, we both gave it an 8. Well above average, still not quite perfect, but I think it hits the mark on the head for a Shadowrun game. And as far as beer, I'm just going to add 1 for bringing Jack Armitage back.
Jesus Christ, this is what it feels like to be on the other side of a long-winded gameplay. God damn it, stop doing that! Shit! Anyway.
Yeah, you know how it feels now.
No, you know what? No, fuck the joke. The bet's over. It's ruined. Great. Anyway, the originality. When it comes down to it, this really isn't that much that we haven't seen before. And that's kind of par for the course for a game that's also a loving tribute to older games. So while the control scheme of the game is certainly different and the story's brand new, there isn't that much that we haven't seen before. It really expands on all the different karma statistics and different kind of characters that you can be. But again, it all seems very familiar, so we both gave it 4s. And as far as beers go, I'll add 1 beer for the new control scheme, why not?
So I'm going to keep replayability real short. You have the different classes you can choose, and the insane number of character customization options that I mentioned during gameplay. And with every character you speak to, you have a number of different options to, I guess, open different dialogue boxes. So there is other reasons to go back. You could hear some different things or read some different dialogue. And not to give you a spoiler, but the ending, you can choose different ways to end. So I'm not exactly sure how drastically that changes the final mission, but we feel there's a lot here. And if you really enjoy the game, you're going to want to go back and explore the world over and over and over again. So as you see, we both gave it 8s. It's above average, and I'm not even going to add a beer. So overall, I spent the most time with this game, and come to think of it, probably the most time with this series. Coming into this series, I had my doubts. I didn't know how good it was going to be, and to be honest, for me to get into an RPG, there really has to be a good story. And like the other Shadowrun games, there is an interesting one here, and the combat really allowed me to enjoy myself to the fullest extent, and this was my favorite Shadowrun experience. Now granted, I don't even have to ask Jim, but I know his favorite Shadowrun is going to be the Sega, but that's nostalgia. He's played that game a million times, and we get it.
But I didn't get to play this one as much either.
But from
I'm not just being a nostalgic dick!
But he would do it anyway.
Maybe.
In all reality, there's no denying from a technical level, this game is just superior. Whether you like the stories from the old ones or the sounds, that's up for debate, but you can't deny the people who created this are the same ones who created those original games you love so much, and Jim mentioned it a million times, we applaud just the level of effort and detail they went into to bring a loving tribute back to a series like this. So, we both gave it 7s. It had its flaws, but it was well above average, and we would highly recommend downloading this, if you have a PC or Mac capable of running it. When we combined all of our scores together, it rounds out to a 7.6. Now as you see, that is the highest scored Shadowrun game, and it's well deserving of it. Maybe in the future we'll look at some of the DLCs for this game, but for right now, we're all tapped out. So, thank you guys for sticking with us through all these Shadowrun reviews. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
When it comes to the beer pairing, I'm gonna have to choose the AleSmith Nut Brown Ale. This is a really tasty beer. And it's one of those beers you can either sit back and savor with its mild cocoa flavors, or you can kind of pound through these fairly easily. The choice is yours. And that's what we wanted to give you, a beer with choice, much like the options you're going to get in this game. So pair these two together and enjoy yourself. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.